In today's show, Krysten Peak of Yahoo Sports joins the program, and we talk all things Trailblazers and the NBA draft. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts. Coming at you every single weekday, Monday through Friday, so make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's episode, a very special one. Krysten Peak of Yahoo Sports joins the program. You've read Krysten Peak of Yahoo, and now you can listen to her on the podcast feed, in the Ball Don't Lie feed. Check out On the Clock with Krysten Peak. Krysten, how you doing?
I'm great. You know, they before the draft, they're like, we're going to give you a podcast. And I'm like, okay, like, what are we going to talk about?
Well,
No,
luckily
it's
you
been
do
fun
draft
leading
stuff.
up to it.
Yeah, luckily you do draft stuff literally year round, so you got plenty to talk about. When folks like me jump on the draft world, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to become a draft expert here starting in like May. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to read Krysten Peak and I'm going to become a draft expert. But luckily you do this literally all the time. You've already been, scouting the next draft prospects this week in Colorado Springs at USA Camp. So, excited to have you on and pick your brain about this and the future. You have a mock draft that I read, but you told me you've got another one coming out Monday on Yahoo Sports. So the Blazers have the third pick in the draft. They've got 23. They've got a second rounder. Can you spoil it? Who do you have the Blazers taking at 3? And we can talk about some of those prospects.
You know what? I literally go back and forth, and it has to do with 2. Like, what
Right,
are the
exactly.
Hornets going to do at 2? Because, the easy fit is Brandon Miller, but the next star point guard coming up is Scoot Henderson, right? So do you draft Scoot and try to find a way to make it work with LaMelo in the backcourt? I think it can work, but
Yeah.
I don't know what the front office is thinking. I ran into a Charlotte Hornets scout at USA Basketball U19 tryouts, and I don't bug these guys. I don't try to get any information from that, and plus they don't know what their front office is going to do. But I did say to him, I was like, listen, if I'm debating every single day back and forth what you guys are going to do, like, I can't imagine the conversations that are happening behind closed doors and the phone calls they're taking, and they're going to explore every option. But right now I think I'm going to keep it Brandon at 2 and then Scoot at 3. Which I don't know if that's different from my mock. See, like,
No,
I
that's
said,
what
like,
you had.
Yeah.
No, actually, last time
back
you
and
did have
forth.
Scoot. Yeah, last
Yeah,
time you did
but
have Scoot and Brandon Miller at 3. But yeah,
this this could be the smoke screen. Last year we were seeing, Jabari Smith 1, Chet 2, Paolo 3, all the way up to the week of the draft, and then the Vegas line went crazy, and you're like, what is happening? And Paolo told me draft night he didn't even know he was going number 1. Like, it's not like Orlando promised him or anything. It was like, ooh, keep a secret. He didn't even know until like 30 seconds before his name is called. So I think we're going to see the same thing at number 2 with Scoot or Brandon. Like, no one's going to know unless there's a trade made ahead of time,
right.
what the Hornets are going to do. But right now, I'm going to switch it up because it's Brandon number 2 and Scoot 3.
I think it is like the Blazers' fate. So much of whatever they do is just determined by what happens at 2, right? So it's like they can set up all their contingencies or whatever, but they're just beholden to whatever happens. To whatever happens ahead of them. You have Scoot though as the second best prospect in the draft, right? Like,
I do.
you see him as the number 2 prospect. What do you like about him?
I mean, we saw it in October. Like, he's a dog on the court. He's a phenomenal playmaker. He has an NBA ready body. He's already been playing in the G League for 2 years. So he's going to have a step up in terms of being used to the NBA pace and the pacing and the spacing, excuse me. And like for Scoot, I mean, I've seen so much growth in him as a prospect from when he was 15 to now. And that's what you want in a young guard coming up. You want to see them continue to grow and grow and grow every time you see them. You don't want to see this where they plateau, right? And so with Scoot, I mean, he's so competitive. He's got a great group around him. His brothers and sisters are running the show. They're I think it's like the Henderson 5 or something. His sister actually, like, his younger sister retired her jersey and Scoot's jersey. Like they had a jersey retirement in the middle of her senior season and she was still playing. Like she passed him as like the all-time leading scorer at their high school. So like they just come from a basketball family. They're super competitive and like what he projects as the next level is insane. So you cannot pass on that. I love Brandon and I love his length and his defensive versatility and what he can bring and his outside shooting. But Scoot is he's a special player.
Can he play with Damian Lillard?
Yeah, he's so funny because to me, he said this to me repeatedly. He's like, "Why do people ask if I can play with anyone?" He's like, I've proven it in the G League, and I don't have a problem sliding in and being the secondary ball handler. Like if he has to play with LaMelo, he said it doesn't matter to me. I can play with anyone. He's like, I just want to win and I want to help my team win. So I don't think there's going to be that power struggle, but you look at the Blazers and it's like, does it fit? And I think that's why
Right.
we're hearing trade talks because you already have Anthony Simons, who they've got a good thing going in the backcourt. You invested in Shaedon Sharp. Like, what are we doing bringing either another guard or wing in, when or I guess Shaden's more of a 2 as well. Like he can slip between the 2 and the 3, but that's why we're hearing, are they going to trade down and entertain talks with New Orleans or another team that has another established star that they can bring in and maybe someone that's more in a rebuild or wants to be a rebuild team and wants to take someone like Scoot Henderson.
Yeah, I think even if the Blazers were to stay at 3 and they were to take, say it's Scoot or whatever, it's really hard to go into camp with Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharp, and say, okay, because I think Shaedon Sharp could eventually play 3 in the NBA, but I don't think you want him guarding NBA wings as a
Right.
20-year-old like immediately next season. You hope he can do that in March. You hope he can do that next year and in the future, but like pegging him to be the guy, like, okay, when Kawhi and Paul George come, you got to guard one of them. That's like that seems like a bad ask. So even if they stay at 3 and they do end up making the pick, which I think is up in the air, and I'll ask you about that in a moment, like something's got to give. Like something changes with this roster one way or another. Their moves are a coming. And you wrote actually earlier this week that you think there's going to be a flurry of moves at the top of the draft. Let's talk about that in the second segment. Today's show is brought to you by Birddogs. They're just really comfortable shorts. Birddogs kind enough to send me a couple pairs of shorts, and I like them because they feel great. They make me look good too. I'm rocking the 5-inch inseam. I got the legs out in the sun in summertime. I'm out in the garden. I'm in the park. I'm having fun. I'm looking good. And these are versatile shorts that look good enough to kind of, feel like you're not dressed all schlubby, but also just straight up really comfortable. The versatility, the comfort you're not going to find anywhere else. And plus, you buy Birddogs right now, you're going to get a free gift. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. Get a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. I promise you. All right. Still chatting here with Krysten Peak of Yahoo Sports. Krysten wrote a story on yahoosports.com this week, on yahoo.com this week, that you expect a flurry at the top of the draft, a flurry of trades with teams in the lottery. Why is that?
You know what? I feel like we start hearing these rumors at this time every single year. Like teams are putting stuff out, like they want to get some sort of like it's all smokescreen because they don't want to tell each other what they're doing, right? So we start hearing these things. But why I believe that this year is different is because when you're looking ahead to the following draft in 2024 and 2025, that there's a drop off in talent, particularly at the one and done level. There's not a lot of star power. Not saying it's going to be bad drafts. Not saying there's not going to be players, but in terms of surefire hits, like we knew about Victor way back when, we knew about Scoot, and so when you're looking at that, and if teams want to get involved and get their hands on some of those long guards, like a Menon Asar Thompson, like Anthony Black, and really bring them in and make them a priority instead of like waiting, hoping and praying next year, like what's available, who's gonna hit. Like I think we're gonna see some teams prioritize that this year, and that's why we might see some trades. And you also have to remember there's 7 teams with multiple picks in the first round, and they did that strategically because if you're outside looking in and you want to entertain, possibly getting in the mix, and like I want to say like 2 to 30, there's value in this draft class. we're seeing some guys late risers after the combine and hearing names like Ben Shepherd, like Omax from Marquette, shoot up and sneak into the first round. Jaime Jaquez from UCLA, after seeing what Caleb Martin did for the Miami Heat, he's getting a lot of love. So, we're starting to hear those names and there's value. So when you have 2 picks like Portland and you want to, take either 3 and then entertain a trade at whatever they're at 23,
23,
then
yep.
that gives them flexibility and room, and I think we're going to see a lot of action.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, it's like, what is Charlotte going to do? Charlotte seems like they're going to take a prospect, but what if they trade for Zion Williamson? Like,
Right.
what if, like, but I think 3, the Blazers absolutely entertaining trades. Sounds like Houston does not want more young folks. I don't know if you've heard stuff on that, but like they're they're probably ready to get some adults, and 4 could, if they were in the top 3 might be different, but at 4 maybe ready to get some adults. Detroit kind of like, what do they do at 5? There's that position there. Orlando at 6 has 2 picks. Indiana has multiple picks at 7.
Yep.
There's like, it kind of lines up right after 1. Like, I think we know what's going to happen at 1. I don't think that. I don't
I
think
think
that
that's
one
the
is.
easiest pick in the draft. I had Jonathan Wasserman on my podcast yesterday, and I said, Was, is there, obviously, number 1 is the easiest pick. After 1, is there an easy pick? Because I was thinking like Portland, because you just wait to see what Charlotte does. But then it's
Right.
like, no, it's not an easy pick because then you're entertaining trades, you're talking to other teams. And he agreed. He's like, there is not an easy pick in this draft. And one trade, and we know this, can like change the entire trajectory of the draft.
Exactly, because if someone trades up and wants Scoot at 2, and then at 3, the Blazers are torn, and they say, okay, actually, we like Ben Thompson more. And then Brandon Miller's all there at 4. Okay, someone might be trading up, say, Brandon Miller was 2 on our board. Now he's at 4. Okay,
Right.
throw it all in. It happens quickly. I think one of the curious things sort of about the future of the Blazers is that once Charlotte picks, whoever picks at 2, they basically have 5 minutes to figure out the direction of their franchise. It's like the clock's going to start. It's like, okay, what are we doing? Is this the reboot with youth, or is this sort of like a build around Dame? And they can't really react until they know what's happening at 2. Like, there's no reason to make a trade. There's no reason to anyone to trade with them. And then like when they're on the clock, it's going to be 5 pretty intense minutes. You mentioned the depth of this draft. Um, when you is there a drop off point in that top 10 that you see where it's like, okay, at a certain point here, it really does drop?
There's tiers, there's different tiers. I would say, Victor, hello, way up
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Scoot and Brandon are the next tier. Maybe you throw in a Men Thompson in that second tier. And then the third tier I would do, if it's not a Men in the second tier, it'd be a Men, Asar, Cam Whitmore. And then after that, you've got another tier of Jarris Walker, Anthony Black, Taylor Hendricks, Grady Dick, Derek Lively has entered the mix, in that top 10, top 12 range. And then from then on, I think it just becomes team preference. You know what I mean?
you,
Like
yeah,
we're hearing Bilal Koulibaly's name, Victor
yeah.
Wembanyama's teammate, mentioned a lot just because of what he's done in the playoff run, sneaking into the lottery. He got a green room invite, and you got Victor tweeting out, he's like, everyone's seeing that he's a top 10 prospect, but not everyone knows that he's a top 5 pick in this draft. And I was like, okay, easy, Victor. Like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. But yeah, after that, I mean, trying to figure out where, Keontae George is going to go. What about Cason Wallace? Where does he fit? Where's Nick Smith? Is he falling? Because we're hearing other names start to creep up. And it's not necessarily that these prospects are falling because they're having bad workouts. It's just the other guys might fit, what the team is trying to build. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
when like I'm asked to write like draft risers and fallers, I'm like, well, I don't really want to do, like, I'll write who's rising, but that just means that the other players are going to be pushed back and
Yeah,
available
naturally,
for
right? Yeah.
established teams that, can develop them.
Yeah, I think particularly after you get out of the like top tier of the draft, teams think about fit more. At the top, it's like, let's just get the dude.
Yeah.
Like, let's get Scoot, and if we have Dame and Ant and all that, it's like, whatever. We'll figure out value. Let's just get the most value. When you get deeper into that like 9 through 14 range in the back half of the lottery, teams are like, okay, well, how does it work? Because we want we want to maximize your fit with this team. This time of year, like, how do teams rise? How do guys rise? Do draft workouts matter?
They do.
Does this stuff matter?
It does. I mean, I was talking to a source. I'm like, how do I say? I was talking to a source yesterday, and it's just like Jalen Hood Shafino is having really good workouts, and you hear that, and you see teams that like the Jazz, who are going to target a primary ball handler, and at 9, if Taylor Hendricks is off the board, because I mean, it's rumored that they really like him. So if Taylor's off the board, do they take Hood Shafino at 9, or do they hope and pray he's still there at 16? If he's
Right.
kind of rising up and having good workouts. Like, this is a guard out of Indiana. He started late. He had a minor back injury, just like little flare-ups. And, when he kind of hit the ground running and towards the end of the season, he was great in the pick and roll. He has a burst and a first step that's kind of sneaky. You don't really expect it. And he's a great facilitator and three-point shooter. So it's like, he ticks all the boxes. He has great size. And if he's working out well and interviewing well, then that's hard to pass up on, especially if you bring in another guy like, say, Cason Wallace or Keontae George, and he doesn't have a good workout. So then it's like, what are you going to do? Like,
Right. Do you think the physical workout stuff, like, oh, he made 17 of 22 threes or whatever, do you think that has I have heard from folks within the league, this, like, they try to ignore some of that stuff, like, because it's like just the recency bias. Do you think that matters, or do you think it's like the getting the guy in the gym and kind of talking to him, sort of that personal stuff, or how do teams weight that generally?
I think it matters positionally speaking. Like, when we look at Derek Lively and what he did at Duke, he only attempted 7 threes all season and made 2
Barely
of them.
shot outside the paint. Yeah.
because the offense ran through Kyle Filipowski, and you had Jeremy Roach, who's a dominant ball guard. And so basically Derek, all he was a rim runner and a rim protector, right? So then you look back at his body of work, who he was in high school. He was a stretch 4 playing alongside Jalen Duren. And that's all he did was shoot threes in the pick and pop. So you go back and you look at their Peach Jam run when they won Peach Jam with Team Final. Then you look and see what he's doing in his pro day, where he's like insanely good in the pick and pop and knocking down threes. And that matters. And so teams will bring him in for a workout. And that's why he's the biggest name in this as a riser in this draft class, because that's what teams want. When you look at Dallas and what they need some rim protection. And if you can, like, Kyrie and Luka expand the floor so much, and so you get Derek in there, and he has an inside presence, you can't ignore him. And then you add that rim protection. Like, that's valuable if Dallas keeps their pick. I don't even know if they keep their pick, but and can you imagine Derek Lively and Chet Holmgren in the front court in Oklahoma City going up against Victor Wembanyama? Like, me and Was were talking about this on my pod, and it's like, can we speak this into existence, please? Like, I would love to see that.
Get more length. Let's do it. Yeah.
Yes.
Less sort of Jalen Williams taking charges. Maybe he can still take a bunch of charges, but let him do it off the bench. It'll be, yeah, I think the positionality, I hadn't considered that, but that makes a ton of sense, right? It's like, if you want to see a guy who maybe is a shooter, then the workout matters. But if you kind of know, it's like if Brandon Miller shot, 40% on 7 threes a game, you got a lot of tape that suggests he can shoot, So if he has a bad shooting afternoon, it's like, we have the tape. The Blazers have 23. I want to ask you about some later first round targets, who you have in their range in the third segment to close out the show. Join us there, won't you? Today's show is brought to you by Gametime, the app that is the place for last-minute tickets, like real last-minute tickets. Like if you want to go see the Portland Timbers host Chicago Fire FC next week at Providence Park, right now on Gametime, on the app and on gametime.co, you can get in the building, get in the stadium and sit upstairs in the North End for $19. There's also tickets, $24. You want to sit a little bit closer, $22 in that North End. And you want to sit on the east side with a view of the sunset, 7:30 kickoff. You're going to have that be in that newly built east side of the stadium, $56 on the Gametime app right now. So don't worry about the stress of buying tickets. Just use Gametime and snag the tickets without all that stress. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the redemption code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Still chatting here with Krysten Peak of Yahoo Sports. Blazers have 3. They have 23. Who do you like in that range at 23? I'll refresh your memory because you did a did your mock draft like more than almost 2 weeks ago now. Chris Murray is who you had him at. Iowa's Chris Murray is who we had at 23 now. Who do you kind of like in that range for the Trailblazers?
I'm leaning more towards Leonard Miller because he's a wing, obviously, and he can stretch the floor. And he played very well alongside Scoot Henderson in the G League. And then also if they don't want to take a wing and they want to add some size and he's there, then Noah Clowney out of Alabama, who, is kind of like he's a secondary Derek Lively. He's not as big, but he's a rim protector. He can shoot the three and he's going to need some development, but he'll spend some time in the G League, but he's another name where it's like, if Victor's obviously going number 1, if Derek goes 10 and you want some length and size, Noah's the best available prospect, right? So I think his range is anywhere from 15 to the Atlanta Hawks to, I don't think he goes past 23 to the Blazers. If he's still there. Now, granted, if the Blazers really want and they're targeting Noah, they might have to trade up and give up that 3rd pick. But Noah Clowney is a name that I'm hearing a lot for the Blazers if he's there at 23. And if not, then Leonard Miller is another name that I'm hearing associated just around the league and who I'm talking to. So Chris Murray, sorry, buddy. Like I'm no longer mocking you to the Portland Trailblazers at 23.
How different do teams approach sort of the back half of the first round? Obviously, you're given guaranteed contracts. You want guys to play, but how much does sort of the upside versus immediate impact change when you get deeper into the first round?
I think it all depends on if you are already a playoff team, then you can take a risk on a player that you want to develop. Like we saw it last year when the Denver Nuggets selected Peyton Watson with the 30th pick. And, he knew he was going to go there and need some development. And that's exactly what he did. He averaged under 5 points and 3 rebounds at UCLA. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, what are the Nuggets doing? Well, they have that room to develop players. So
Right.
You're going to see more of that. And if it's a team that's more in like a rebuild and you don't, or not necessarily a rebuild, but you know what you're getting. Do you know what I mean? Like you want to you don't want to take that risk. Like you don't want to swing for the fences and you just want, like a Jaime Jaquez or a Ben Shepherd or an Omax where they're a little bit older, they're a little bit more productive. You know what you're getting and you feel safe about that pick.
Yeah, that you could say, hey, we feel the ceiling might not be as high, but we feel pretty good about the immediate floor.
Yeah,
There's
they
some value
can
there.
exactly.
Yeah,
Like
I
they
think
can
Christian Brown
be
is a relatively good example.
right. Like they can they're plug and play right away, maybe in their secondary unit. They're going to give solid minutes. They're already experienced. They probably have a few years of college under their belt. And like Chris Murray fits that mold. I don't want to like dig on Chris Murray, but
Yeah, he's 23. He's like
yeah.
an adult. They treat the 23-year-old in the NBA draft is like so ancient. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, 23. My goodness.
I know. Well, there's nothing more that the NBA values than youth and upside. So even with Brandon Miller, they're like, and the Thompson twins are like, oh my gosh, they're 20. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, what do you mean 20? That's not old. I mean, I understand that you want to get them as young as possible, get them into your system, get them with your nutritionist, their trainers, and kind of instill the culture of that program on them. But also, I mean, 20 is not old. Let's
The
stop being
10-month
ridiculous.
difference that people splice between this time of year between prospects is always so bizarre to me. It's like, well, he was born in October. It's like, okay, so you really value the guy born in January? Great. Like if that is the difference for your franchise, amazing. But I wonder, do you think, and I know I'll get you out of here shortly after this, but like, do you think the Blazers, they have 3 picks. What are the chances that they make all 3? Even if, what are the chances they just make both of their first round picks?
I mean, I go back and forth, right? Because it's like, depending on what they do at 3, I think will determine what the rest of their draft looks like at 23 and in the second round. But I also have to remember, like, they hired Mike Schmitz from ESPN for a reason. Like, he's one of the best evaluators in the game. And like, he's 1 year removed from knowing who these players are. And I guarantee you, like, he already had a good idea of who these players were before the Trailblazers hired him as an assistant GM. So I mean, looking at that, he probably wants to make the picks.
I bet he does. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think everything depends on what the Blazers do starting at 3.
This is where we keep coming back to, y'all. So we keep talking about on the show. There's going to be 5 minutes that determine the direction of this franchise. So like, we do the show every day. There is a certain anxiety building with Blazers fans about kind of what happens, but I think at this point it's mostly exciting because they're going to have a good option at 3, regardless of what they do. And as we, as Krysten's reported this week, and as we've heard whispers from around the league, is like there's interest in the top of this draft. There are other teams that really want to trade in. The Blazers will have, they will, I don't know, get to pick their direction, but they will certainly have a lot of options with what direction they want to go when they're on the clock. But we will have to wait until whatever happens at 2 to get there. Krysten, if people are looking for more of your work, where can they find it?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Krysten Peak, or read all my stuff on Yahoo Sports. Next week, it's going to be a lot of content. New mock draft, new pod coming out. I'm sure I'll do a few features, and then I'll have an ongoing story that's updated every day on the latest rumors and trades I'm hearing about. So fun stuff.
Krysten does
I'm
awesome
about
work.
to lose all sleep, which is why
Krysten
I'm
does
wearing
awesome
it.
work all year long. Like someone who follows draft prospects, is at the AAU tournaments, is everywhere. This week is very challenging. So reward her for 365 days and plus this brutal 10-day stretch leading up to the draft by reading all of her great stuff. Listen to her on the Ball Don't Lie feed. Krysten, thanks so much for joining the program. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Krysten Peak for joining the program. Like I said, go check out her work. Listeners, come back next week. 5 more shows. On Monday, we'll round up the latest mock drafts heading into draft week. That's right. We are heading into draft week. It's going to be a whole bunch of fun. We will round up the latest rumors. We will make sure that you are on top of everything. So come back 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts. It's what we do here on Locked On Blazers. So make sure you join us. Tell your friends. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.